Is Tainus Esther. It is the 13th day of Chodesh Adar, the day that our enemies, once upon a time in Persia, tried to destroy us, and we were zeicha to a big milchama then, and an even bigger milchama, it seems, today. And just like Hashem saved us then, Hashem is saving us now, and all of our learning should be in the schus of our incredibly brave Chayalim, brothers and sisters in Eretz Yisrael, and everybody that is fighting for the freedom of the Jewish people. And it should be chizuk for us to be mechazik ourselves, to continue to learn, continue to daven, continue to do chesed, and to reach out to each other ba'ava. And it should be that from this Purim we should be able to go from geula to geula to the geula shleima amitis. We are at the top of Kuf Yud Daled Amud Aleph, after going through the list of possible aliases of various Tanaim and Amoraim. The Gemara tells us on the third line, Amar Rabbi Bar Rochana, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Mishmei de Rabbi Yehuda Bar Eloi. We have the name of Rabbi Yehuda Bar Eloi, Echel Batzal, Veshev Batzel. Eat onions and sit in the shade. Meaning, if you don't spend too much money on your food, then you'll be able to have a nice place to live. Right, so hold back on eating fancy foods, and then you'll be okay. You'll have a nice place to live. Furthermore, don't spend your budget on eating geese and chickens, because then your heart is going to chase after you. Meaning you're going to have a fine schmeck, a big greedy appetite, and you won't be able to deal with lower quality foods. And that's going to be bad for you. And connected to that is reduce your food and drink intake and spend more money on your home, which pashtus means better to spend your money on where you live than on your entertainment budget. One is experiential asset, and one is a permanent asset that has the ability to sustain you in the future. But the Ben Yoyada notes that this is not just a drasha for this world, but really what it means is hold back on your enjoyment in this world to be taisef al dirascha, your future home, meaning olam haba. Hold back on spending too much on food and drink in this world, rather give it to tzedakah, spend your money on doing mitzvahs, and then you will be zachah to a nicer dira in the olam salyonim. Says the Gemara, Ki ata Ula, when Ula came from Eretz Yisrael to Bavel, Amar, he said the mashal like this: Mishla maslin b'ma'arava. Midla is the lashon of mashal. So they made a mashal in the west, and they said, Da'achel al yasa tashi ba'al yasa, with one with an aleph and one with an ayin. One who eats from the ali of the tail, tashi ba'al yasa, is going to have to hide in the attic. Meaning, if you have a fine palate, and you are interested in eating fine food, so you're going to end up borrowing money to sustain your lifestyle, and you're not going to be able to afford your lifestyle. And in such a situation, Tasha B'al Yasa, you're going to have to hide in the attic away from your creditors. However, the achel kakuli, if you eat cheap food, you can be out in the public, even in places where everybody can find you. And you won't have to be worried because nobody's going to be chasing after you. Which means, b'pashtus, as the person makes money, they should endeavor to not increase their lifestyle costs. They should keep their lifestyle costs as is, humble, simple, pashat, and use that money to amass assets that they will be able to sustain themselves in the future, and to give tzedakah that will sustain themselves into the infinite future. And now we are getting back to for the pretty much for the rest of the Masechta. We are going to be now going through the Seder. How did the Seder operate? We are, of course, in the 10th parak of Pesachim. We've had a lot of advice and a lot of refuahs and a lot of business advice, and now we are getting back to Leil HaSeder. The Mishnah says as follows: Mazgulay Kajrishan. They pour him the first cup. The first cup, that's the first cup of the Arbukaisis, because that's what the Mishnah left us off with, right? That even the Anish B'Yisrael shouldn't have less than 4 cups of wine. So the first cup begins as follows. He tells us, Mavarich al Hayom. First, you say the bracha on the Yom, which is Mekadosh Yisrael ve'Hazmanim. Ve'acharkach Mavarich al Yain, and then you make the bracha Bari Pri Hagafen, which is the opposite of what we do, because we hold like Beis Hillel. Beis Hillel tells us Mavarach Alayan v'achar kach Mavarach Alayim. First you say Bar Peri Agafen, and then you say Mekadosh Yisrael v'Azmanim. And now the Gemara details this machlokes. Tanu Rabbanan, the Brisa says as follows: Dvarim shebein Beis Shammai uBeis Hillel b'Suda. In the collection of things that Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel disagree about the Suda, and this is narrowed to our cases over here, but it is a much more extensive machlokes. Beis Shammai tells us Mavarach Alayim v'achar kach Mavarach Alayayin. First you make the bracha on the day, and then you make the bracha on the wine. Why? Because the reason that you are making Kiddush is because of today. Because today is a Yom Tov, today is a Shabbos. So therefore, the Yom comes before the Yayin. That's the reason that you're having wine at all. Ukvar Kiddush Hayom. And secondly, the day has already become Kaddish, meaning the obligation to make Kiddush has already begun, the moment that Shabbos begins. V'adayin Yayin Leiba, and the obligation of wine hasn't come yet, because the obligation of being Mekadosh the day happens immediately as the day starts. But the obligation of Kiddush only starts by the time you're going to have the meal, because Kiddush Malkam Suda. So that's why you're going to make Kiddush on the wine. You have to make the bracha on the wine before you have the Suda. So both in terms of the orders of the obligation and the reasons for the obligation, the Yom comes before the Yain. Beis Hillel says, Mavarach Alayayin, first you make the bracha on the wine, V'achar kach Mavarach Alayim, and then you make the bracha on the day. Why? Because the fact that you have yayin is the reason that you are saying kiddush on that yayin. Meaning, you could in theory, practically speaking, make kiddush on bread, but without wine and or bread. Meaning, if you didn't have wine, you'd make on bread. But without wine, you wouldn't be saying kiddush at all. Right? You wouldn't have what to say Kiddush on. So you first have to say the Bar Peri Agafen, and then you can say Mekadosh HaShabbos, Mekadosh Yisrael v'Azmanim. Davar Acher, and he gives another reason. Birkas Hayayin Tadira, Birkas Hayom Eina Tadira, Tadir Sheina Tadir Kaidem. We more regularly say the bracha Bar Peri Agafen than we say the bracha on the day, and therefore that which is more regular takes precedence in terms of the order. And then says the Brisa v'Hilchos HaKedivrei Beis Hillel, and we pass according to the opinion of Beis Hillel. The Rishonim and Acharonim deal with a lot of questions over here. The argument of Beis Shammai, does the argument of Beis Shammai hold up even if you are making Kiddush early? What if you're taking Shabbos early? So then you would be Mavarich on the Yom, but the Yom hasn't started yet. The Yom only starts because now you've been Kabel the fact that a Shabbos is Yom Tov. So on a regular Shabbos and Yom Tov, Pesach is complicated because being Makabel the day early is problematic. We don't do that. But you don't have that argument if you take in Shabbos early. And the additional reason of Beis Shammai, Mevarach Alayim v'achar Mevarach Alayim, Shayom Gorim L'Yayin, because the day causes the yayin, is that necessarily true? Maybe the day could be good in the past. So there are those that argue that maybe that's why Beis Shammai needs both of these reasons. But the Gemara is now going to ask the question in the opposite direction, according to Beis Hillel. Beis Hillel didn't give you two reasons. Beis Hillel says, here's a reason, and then davar acher, and I'll give you another reason. So the Gemara wants to know, my davar acher, what is he saying davar acher? I'll give you another reason. Beis Shammai didn't say, and I'll give you another reason. Beis Hillel just gave you these two reasons. What's the, and he has another reason. And maybe you will say, Hasam Tarti, there are two reasons of Beis Shammai. And there's only one reason for Beis Hillel. Therefore, he says two. I'll give you two reasons. And meaning there's two reasons that Beis Shammai says, and therefore Beis Hillel is going to give you two reasons as well. Now, the two reasons of Beis Hillel do operate independently of each other, as opposed to the two reasons of Beis Shammai that you need in order to fill in gaps with the Svaras. Nevertheless, says the Gemara, V'Hilchos Divrei Beis Hillel, the halacha follows the opinion of the Beis Hillel. Now, this is not a line that should strike anybody as odd, but it strikes the Gemara as odd because of how not odd it is. Pshita, this is so obvious. Da nafik baskel. We have a baskel that came. The Gemara in Eruvin Yud Gimel Beis tells us that the baskel came out and said the halacha follows the opinion of Beis Hillel, even though both of them are correct. The halacha follows the opinion of Beis Hillel. Why do you need to tell me that the halacha follows Beis Hillel? You know this. You could say Kodim Baskel. Maybe this happened before the Baskel, meaning this brisa was recorded before that Baskel came out. Alternatively, La'achar Baskel, that this brisa was recorded after the Baskel, and this Tana, the Tana of this brisa is following in the opinion of Rabbi Yeshua. Rabbi Yeshua, this is the opinion of Rabbi Yeshua. The Amar Rabbi Yeshua said, Baskel, the famous sugya of Tana Shel Achnai in Bava Metzia on the Testament base, where there was a machlokes between Rabbi Yeshua and Rabbi Eliezer, and the Baskel came out and says, leave Rabbi Eliezer alone. And Rabbi Yeshua says, we don't care about the Baskel. So maybe since this Tana is the opinion of Rabbi Yeshua, he needs to be able to say, V'halacha ke divrei Beis Hillel, because the Baskel doesn't make a difference. So the Tosfos here wants to know, well then, Taka, why do we pass them like Beis Hillel? It's just because Beis Hillel is the majority. That's why we pass them like Beis Hillel. Maybe once upon a time, at some point in time, there was hedging. We weren't sure who the halacha followed. But once it became the majority opinion, the halacha is going to be like Beis Hillel because we have rules. Because we have following Achar Rabbim Lahatas that we have as a pasuk. And maybe it is only in the case that you have a baskel against the rabbim that Rabbi Yeshua has a problem with it. But a baskel that would be emphasizing the opinion of the rabbim, that would not be a problem. Or that the case of Tana Shel Achnai, that the baskel was more expansive than that particular machlokes. The baskel said that the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer is amazing because halacha k'mos b'chol makom, we should pass on like him all the time. So Rabbi Yeshua says, whoa, who says that we pass on like him all the time? Maybe not. Okay, Hevila fun of next Mishnah. They brought in front of him. What did they bring in front of him? So this is a machlokes between you have Rashi and the Rashbam on the one hand, and Rabbeinu Chananel and the Rambam on the other hand. The version that we have on the page, with Rashi and the Rashbam, and the Balei Tosfos point out Heviel means that they brought in front of him vegetables, right? That's what they're bringing in front of him. But the Mishnah doesn't itself say what they brought. You didn't bring anything. So Rabbeinu Chananel and the Rambam seems to imply that what did they bring? That they brought the table. That meaning after you make Kiddush, then you bring the table out, and that's got the Seder plate and all the other accoutrements for everything else that you need for the Seder. So Hevilefanov, they brought it in front of him, either which way. Now you have vegetables in front of you. Metav v'chazaris, you dip the lettuce. You dip the lettuce into the vinegar or the salt water. And Tosfos here points out that the reason that we are going to do this is in order to get the kids to ask the questions. We'll see this in a bit. You're going to dip in the chazaris until you reach the thing that comes before the pass, which is the maror. Meaning you dip in the chazaris and you stop. You don't, like, in the order of things that you have in front of you. You have your salad to start with, but you don't get to the maror, the parperes pass. And then hivir of matzah. Then they bring matzah in front of you. Vechazaris. V'charoses and chazaros and charoses, which we are going to discuss in the up and coming amudim. Ushnei tavshilin, and two cooked dishes. Our minhag is that we have two things on the table. We have the shank bone, right? We have the bone, which is zecher lepesach, and an egg, which is zecher lechagiga. Afal pi she'ein charoses mitzvah, and then the Mishnah says, even though charoses is not a mitzvah, it's not a mitzvah, you should still have it there. You got to have charoses on the table. Rabbi Eliezer ben Tzadok is of the opinion mitzvah. It is a mitzvah. Charis is a mitzvah. Uva mikdash hamivin lefanav gufay shel Pesach. And in the Beis Hamikdash, they would bring in front of you the gufay shel Pesach. And we'll see that the up and coming Mishnayos are hedging between, are we talking about in the time of the Mikdash or the time of Galus? Where exactly are we talking? And because you have mamarim of the Tanaim that came from before the Churban, and Mamar of the Tanaim that came after the Churban. But there is a machlokes whether or not charusis is a mitzvah, and we will talk about this a little bit further. And in the days of the Beis Hamikdash, they would bring in front of you the gufa shel Pesach, which is only going to be eaten at the end of the meal. And Be'ez Hashem Yisbarach, we will continue with these discussions, getting deeper into the halachas of Leil HaSeder itself. As we are approaching, we're not quite at Shloshim Yom Kedem HaChag. That would be tonight and tomorrow. which would be Yud Dalet Adar is going to be 30 days before Yud Dalet Nisan. So all of the halachas of Korban Pesach, this is a good opportunity to Chazar and all of it. That please God, we should be zeicha to be mashlim our chiyuvim, not just of learning the Masechta, but of bringing the Korban Pesach be'itay b'shat of Bismane. And Be'ez Hashem, we will see you guys later. Freilich and Purim.